Access keeps track of everything that happens in your database through a collection of hidden system tables. Usually these are kept far out of reach, but it's interesting to know that they exist and see how things work under the hood. Before we do, however, a word of caution. Messing about with system tables can be dangerous, and at no point should you attempt to modify anything inside of them. If any changes are made to a system table, it can corrupt your entire database. With that said, we can reveal the system tables by right-clicking in the navigation pane and choosing Navigation Options. Down on the bottom, we have those two options for Show Hidden Objects and this one over here that says Show System Objects. I'll turn both of those on. When I say OK, our navigation pane fills up with a whole slew of new tables that all start with the MSys prefix. MSys are all the system tables that are typically hidden by Access. Let's go through a couple of these and see what they are. First, I'm going to double-click on this one that says MSys Access Storage. MSys Access Storage keeps a log of items that were added to the database. We can see the name of the item here and any time it was updated or created in these two columns here. Let's go ahead and close this out. And if it asks us to save the changes, I say no. MSys IMEX columns here is a listing of all of the fields that were added or imported into this database. So when I created this database, I imported tables from an existing Excel files. And you can see the category names here and the data types that were chosen for each column. Let's go ahead and close this out. Again, I'm not going to save any changes here. The file MSys relationships keeps track of all of the table relationships in the database, and it tells you which fields are related to each other. Let's go ahead and close this out. Now, all of those tables actually store some interesting information, but it's not really useful for the end user in the database. There is one system table that we can make use of though, and it's called MSys Objects. Let's go ahead and double click on that one to open it. MSys Objects is a listing of all of the different objects that are in our database. We have a date created, a date updated, and if I scroll over here to the right, I can see some information about names, the parent ID of the objects that they're on, and if I scroll over here a little bit further to the right, I have a column called Type. Let's go ahead and filter out some of these types to see what some of these objects are. In the Type drop-down list here, I'm going to choose Select All to uncheck everything, and I'm going to choose Type 1. I'll check this on to filter my table here to just the objects of Type 1. We'll go ahead and say OK, and we'll take a look at their names over here in this column. You can see in the name column, we see MSys Objects, Customers, Employees, and if I scroll down, Orders, Products, and States. These are all of the tables that are in my database. So all the objects of Type 1 are local tables. Let's go ahead and change this type again. This time I'm going to choose Type 5. Let's go ahead and say OK. And we'll see that we have one of Type 5. And it's this SQ Orders by State. Type 5 are queries in our database. And this is the embedded query that's in the Orders by State report. Let's go ahead and change our type again. I'm going to change it to one of these up here at the top. Let me scroll down and uncheck Type 5, and then I'll scroll back up. I'm going to choose Type -32768, this one here. The objects of Type 32768, I can take a look at their names, Add Customer, Main Menu Options, Main Menu Reports, and Splash Screen. In my navigation pane, those correspond to all of my forms here. So Type -32768 are all forms. One more time in the Type menu, I'll uncheck that one, and I'll choose -32764. We'll say OK. Here we have this name is Orders by State. And if I scroll down here, that corresponds to my reports. So Type -32764 are all of my report objects. So by using the MSys Objects table and knowing which type we're looking for, we can get a listing of all the different objects that are in our database. So that's what the system tables look like. Let's go ahead and close MSys Objects. And I'm not going to save any changes. And I'll re-hide the system tables. I'll right-click at the top of my navigation pane. I'll choose Navigation Options. And I'll turn off Show System Objects and Show Hidden Objects. Go ahead and say OK, and that returns my navigation pane so that I don't see any of those system objects. So that's what the system tables look like. Most of them, while they're interesting to see, aren't terribly useful. However, the MSys Objects table does present us with an opportunity to work with the database objects in a new way. So in the next movie, we'll make use of that information that we just saw.